This is Doug DeMuro, and today we're going to talk about the 7 coolest practical performance cars. I feel like we're always talking about sports cars and exotics and the impractical stuff, but what if, you want to have fun, but you need some practicality, some seats, a cargo area, that kind of thing. Let's talk about it today. And I've done a few videos on kind of practical performance cars over the years, but in this case, I want to emphasize like the coolest and yet still practical. Usually we talk about like the most affordable, the most reliable. Now we're talking coolest. You want to be practical, but you want to be cool? This is your list. Before we get started, are you ready for your next cool car? Sell your enthusiast car on Cars and Bids. Trading in your car to dealers means you aren't getting market value for your car, leaving you with less cash for your next fun car. Just look at our recent sales of these cool cars compared to current trade-in value. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is the trade-in offer, and this is the Cars and Bids result. Get started now on carsandbids.com. Sell on Cars and Bids and join the best community to sell your enthusiast car. Okay, so coolest practical performance cars. I have ranked this list in order of cost. So I'm starting with the cheapest cars and I'm going to the most expensive. I think in a part of practicality to me is that the cars aren't that expensive. So nothing on this list is more than $100,000, and there's a lot of stuff that's a lot cheaper than that. But I mean, you could get into like the Urus and the Cullinan, those are cool, but that kind of ruins the whole point of the practicality aspect of this. They're just not that affordable for most people. It's not realistic. So we have a wide variety of price ranges, but they're all relatively affordable, starting with one of my all-time favorite practical performance cars, the Ford Focus ST. Love the Focus ST. I love hot hatchbacks in general. I've owned quite a few myself, had a GTI early on, which is kind of the quintessential hot hatchback, but I have specifically always loved the Focus ST for a couple reasons. Number one, I think it drives fantastically. It always had more power than the GTI of its era. It was quicker, it was faster, it felt quicker and faster. It was just a really surprisingly fast car for the money. I also always loved how it steered. I think it has fantastic steering, super communicative, really quick, very capable, just easy, get in the car and kind of point it and it really goes where you want. Again, better than other hot hatchbacks from its era. It was surprisingly quick steering, great suspension, it cornered soft, great seats. Obviously, it was a little cheap, right? It was a little cheap in turn. It was a Ford Focus, so right there you were like kind of coming at things from a cheap perspective. You showed up that somewhere, someone didn't know you had a Focus ST. It was like, oh, he drives a Focus. But also the interior was never that nice. But that was kind of the point. Like, it's sort of the point in general of hot hatchbacks. You get a practical, compact hatchback, but also a performance-y one. But in that case, in particular, Ford was able, I think, to deliver better performance than the rivals, in part because they actually kept costs down and didn't go too crazy making the interior specifically nice or anything like that. The really cool thing, though, about the Focus ST to me, I always thought it was a bargain, but these days they are selling pretty regularly for around $10,000 or less. Now, it's been 10 years since this car came out. There are a lot of Focus STs out there that have been ragged on, miled up, modified in ways that we do not like to talk about here on the Doug DeMuro YouTube channel. You have to make sure, if you're actually looking for performance and practicality, that you avoid such cars. Obviously it's no problem to mod your car and have fun, whatever, but if practicality is your choice, the more mods you do, the more that goes out the window. I think that the Focus ST can be a very practical car if you go after one that has service record, that is relatively low mileage, that hasn't been screwed with, probably a later production car, which means that you're really not going to be spending 10. It's more like 12 to 15, although I think even that is a complete bargain. But either way, absolutely thrilling, wonderful, awesome performance car, and reasonably practical. It was a Focus hatchback, not necessarily maybe a family car for a big family, but if you have to be carrying stuff or carrying a little kid or maybe two, it can totally do that job, and it has a reasonably practical cargo area, and it was just a blast to drive. Okay, next car on my practical performance car list are under $30,000. This one, instead of in the high 20s, you can get a VA generation Subaru WRX STI. So that was 2000 2015 to 2021. Those were only offered as sedans, so you don't get the practicality of a hatchback, but it was a little bit larger than the Focus I just mentioned. So you get a slightly larger interior, and you do still have a full sedan trunk, like in a Camry or an Accord or that kind of thing. But obviously, you get a WRX STI, which is a lot more thrilling of a car. I've been a big WRX fan since the very first one came to the US in 2002, and now that the 90s ones are legal, I'm even fans of those. I think it's a great car, and it always has been. They've always had kind of potent, fun powertrains. They've generally always looked good. They've been fun to toss around, easy to modify, just nice cars to drive. And I think the VA WRX STI right now represents a pretty compelling value in the overall WRX world. Yes, the early WRXs and STIs are cheap, but obviously they're also starting to get old. They've got a ton of miles. Tech is not very good. Safety is not very good. They've usually been ragged on, harder to find. Newer ones are awesome. I love the new WRX, but you don't get an STI. Some of the tech features are kind of limited to automatic models. It's a little disappointing, even though I really think the new WRX is awesome. But I think a sweet spot in the $25,000 to maybe $32,000 range is this VA WRX STI, which is just a thrilling, fast, exciting, fun car, and you can tune it even more than that, and yet you retain practicality, you retain driving enjoyment. It is an excellent vehicle. It really, truly is an excellent, really solid, great performing car that offers great practicality, and I think right now you're at a point where prices are sort of deals. They're not crazy cheap, but they're sort of deals, and they're also not really depreciating significantly anymore. I can't imagine these things are ever going to be $10,000, $15,000 cars, at least in the near term, based on where other STIs have gone. So great choice, highly recommended. Next one, coolest practical performance cars. This one is a little bit more modern, which is kind of a surprise. Still under $40,000 this time. The latest Acura Integra Type S. They came out in 24, I believe, and what a great car that is. I like the new Civic Type R. I think it's great. It is basically a less luxury version of the Integra Type S, but I think the Integra Type S really improves a few things over the Civic Type R. For one thing, the ride quality is better. It's a more comfortable car. The interior is nicer. So from a luxury perspective, it's just nicer. And honestly, that also stretches to include the appearance. The Integra Type S just looks more classy, more luxurious. Now, there's a lot of people who would prefer the Civic Type R's appearance, and I totally get that. And if that's you, I recommend that car also. But I think for a lot of people, they don't necessarily want to drive around with a giant wing and all the other stuff you get with the Civic Type R. And the Integra Type S really allows you to have a more muted version of that same experience. So if you're getting older, if you're the type of person who's in the market for a practical performance car because you have kids or because you're commuting for work, whatever, and you don't necessarily want the Civic Type R kind of crowd anymore, the Integra Type S is almost this amazing deliverance of here's all of that, but more luxurious, more rational, more comfortable for sort of an aging performance car enthusiast. But the really good part is you keep the powertrain, you keep the transmission, and they are both excellent. So you have sort of this great powertrain and transmission from the Civic Type R, but provided in this better looking, more luxurious, more comfortable package. It still drives great. It still steers and handles great. It is a wonderful car. It is very practical, and used ones are already creeping below $40,000 into the kind of the mid-30s, which is a really good sweet spot for that car. I do think there is still more depreciation to come since that car is not particularly old, but if the Civic Type R, and especially the first gen that was sold here back in 2017, if that gives us any indication, we're not going to see significant depreciation. The Integra Type S will never depreciate greatly compared to the Type R. As long as the Type R is still up here, the Type S probably in the used market will become less desirable than the Type R, but I can't imagine it ever is half price, right? So they will keep Type R, Type S values will remain high because of that. And so it's a reliable car, and it's one that doesn't cost that much to own because depreciation will be minimized. And it's really hard to not want all of those things. Like, it may not be a Countach, it may not be like a 911, you know, like the craziest performance cars, but it really combines a lot of great stuff in one in a pretty great way. Now, my first three choices have all been manual transmission cars. I understand that there are people who are commuting and who don't necessarily want manuals, and that's part of the practicality of a practical performance car. So the next cars on this list are all either automatic only or offered with an automatic, starting with the Range Rover Sport SVR. I really wanted to make sure some form of SUV was on this list, since that's what a lot of people think of practical in their practical performance car. Range Rover Sport, the previous body style, which ended in 1920, around there, the SVR version was a treat. It was a supercharged V8 with 575 horsepower, and it drove wonderfully. Even though you think of the Range Rover as a big, kind of bulky off-roader type car, the Sport specifically was very focused, just really a great performance car. It steered and handled surprisingly well, and even though there was a Jaguar F-Pace version which had better steering and handling, the Range Rover Sport definitely has better practicality. It has a larger interior, it has more cargo space, it does have more off-road capability if that's something you're interested in, and it's just more desirable. More people want the Range Rover Sport than the F-Pace. It looks better, the Land Rover brand is stronger, etc. These cars, shockingly, have come into the 40s. You can get Range Rover Sport SVRs actually into around 30 for the early ones, but I would recommend just getting a late one like a 19. They're hard to find because they weren't making that many of them. People weren't particularly interested in the high performance version of this car, but they are out there and they are relatively affordable. And because it's not the brand new body style where this would be a $120,000 car, it is depreciated pretty significantly. Now, I am aware that Land Rover reliability is a little bit questionable, but I think by getting one that's 5 or 6 years old, you're not really quite entering the realm of the worst of the worst in terms of Land Rover reliability. And at 2019, you can still get certified pre-owned from Land Rover and get at least a little bit of warranty in addition to this crazy powertrain. And I just think this car is really fun, really luxurious too. Great modern technology, fun, good interior, but also fun to drive and just a blast. Like this throaty sounding exhaust, muscle, just pure muscle this car was. And kind of more fun in my mind than competitors from BMW, which actually were less reliable, the X5M, and Mercedes-Benz, which I think the ML and GLE 63s of this era were a little bit more muted. The Range Rover just has so much personality. And I really think it is a great choice as a practical performance car, as long as it stays reliable. But I think, again, you find a nice one, relatively low miles, you try to get it, good dealer servicing, maybe certified pre-owned, you probably will end up not having a terrible experience in that car. Might be a little bit less reliable than some rivals, but a lot of these cars have gotten quite complicated technically, and that's sort of a truth to them, is that reliability could be an issue. And speaking of technically complicated, our next cool practical performance car, the Porsche Taycan Turbo. I know it's electric, but it is hard to ignore the value that this car presents. These Taycan Turbo models, for one thing, they look like Porsches. They have a cool, sleek, attractive look that came out 6 years ago. I still think it looks good. I still see a Taycan on the road and I'm like, wow, that looks like a premium car. It looks like a sporty car. It is a very desirable car. I really think that. Beyond that, the drive is like a Porsche. I didn't know what to expect when I got into a Taycan. I had never really driven a true performance electric car before. You had the Teslas with a lot of power, but their handling was always not where a Porsche's was. And I remember getting in the Taycan and driving it and being like, okay, they did it. Like, they gave us an electric car, but it's a Porsche. And they really do drive great. The steering is great. The handling is fantastic. The cars have great suspension and a wonderful chassis that, despite all the electric vehicle hardware, etc., really remains balanced and poised and very predictable in even really hard, fast cornering. And it's just a really good car to drive. But the really cool thing is, this is a 670 horsepower car that's only 4 or 5 years old, with a 150 sticker when it was new, that is now pretty findable for around $60,000. And in fact, knocking on the door of the $50,000 range, and only continuing to depreciate. I mean, if you wanted to wait another year, or if you wanted to get a 4S instead, and take a little bit of a power hit, you could definitely save even more money. It's a fun car, it's a fast car, it's a bargain, it's relatively practical, and I just see only positives about this Taycan Turbo as a used car buy. Now again, you're getting into technically complicated, you're getting into potential reliability issues. I totally understand that. I feel that, but this is a list of the coolest practical performance cars, not necessarily the most practical practical performance cars, and I think that is a little bit of a dice roll. Again, you try to find one certified pre-owned, you try to find one with dealer history, with low miles, you'll probably end up okay. Maybe not go after the very earliest cars in their first model year, but nonetheless, if you can make this work, it is such a desirable car. It is so much fun to drive. Understandably, it's electric, but these are practical cars. This is a daily driver, commuter, pick up the kids from school car. And if you have a sports car separate in the garage, having this as a complement to that would be really, really cool. Okay, down to our last two coolest practical performance cars. Number one, the Ram TRX. You can't argue with the fact that this is cool and practical and performance. Ram TRX, which was the Ram that was made with the Hellcat engine. I'm surprised to see that these Ram TRXs are already getting into the 60s. They've held their value reasonably well. You know, sticker was probably 75 to 95, depending on which year and which trim and model you got. But the fact that they're getting into the 60s is pretty damn appealing. This is a 700 plus horsepower Hellcat powered Ram. It's just got so much personality and so much excitement and so much fun. And these trucks, among all of the off-road focused performance trucks that have been out in the last few years, the Raptors, the Trail Bosses, the TRD Pros, the TRX is the one that stands above them all as the most enjoyable, the most exciting, the most insane, the most overall impressive, crazy, awesome vehicle. And getting into the 60s, they're really starting to become appealing in part because I really don't think you're going to see significant quick depreciation after this. They already haven't lost that much money, but they have lost a little. And you're going to see sort of a flat curve from here on out is my guess. They're going to eventually be worth 30, 40, but we're talking eight years in the future. You'll get a lot of use out of the truck and not lose that much money. Now, I do want to say, I also love the Ram RHO, which has not been received well by enthusiasts because it doesn't have the Hellcat motor. I also love the Ford Raptor. They're great. Both of those trucks are really, really desirable. I think the RHO drives great and it does not deserve the hate that it's gotten. It is a wonderful truck, off-road performance, a lot of good stuff about it. I think that the Raptor is, of course, a fantastic truck. For years it's been on sale, and for years it's been a wonderful truck. However, the TRX just offers the most of everything. And Ford does have an answer to the TRX, the Raptor R, but they were higher priced to begin with, and they have not depreciated as quickly because they are much less common. TRXs are pretty findable and pretty fun to drive, especially at that price point. 60s for that level of truck and that level of practicality is pretty cool. Okay, final car, coolest practical performance cars. You cannot make a list of the coolest practical performance cars and not include the Cadillac CT5V Blackwing. This is the one that was knocking on the door of $100,000 that I mentioned before. You can get early ones, even with a manual transmission, in the 80s. That does not mean they are cheap, but there are a couple of important things here. Number one, they are not losing value. The depreciation has been tremendously slow on this car, which is not surprising considering how depreciation has treated the manual CTS-Vs that came before it. That car is also really desirable, and if you look at the manual, even the manual sedans, but the manual wagons especially, those cars are still trading in MSRP or above all these years later. It is an incredibly desirable car, and the market realizes that and rewards it with limited depreciation. That's also true of the CT5V Blackwing. I think the market realizes this car is rare. It is not going to be made for a long time. It is not made in large numbers. It is a special car in this era, and so there is a lot of demand for it, both new and used, relative to the small amount of these cars that they're making. So my point there is, yes, very expensive car to buy. However, I don't think you'll get killed on ownership costs. They are relatively new. In fact, they're still on sale as a new car. And I don't think you'll get killed on depreciation because I think there will be a lot of market interest in this car, especially as it goes off the market, which you have to assume will happen in the next few years. I think there will continue to be strong interest, strong demand. So high purchase price, but not high cost of ownership. And then you come to the fact that it is just an awesome car. It is so much fun to own and to drive. It is so cool. It's impossible to ignore just how special that car is. I love how fast they are. I love how well they handle. I love how they look. I love how nice they are. And frankly, I love that this car even exists, that in this era, Cadillac is still making a 600 plus, almost 700 horsepower rear wheel drive, manual transmission, luxury sports sedan with a V8. It is totally crazy. And it absolutely deserves a play. If you're looking at cool performance cars, Cadillac at some price point, whether it's old CTS-Vs or the modern Blackwings, Cadillac
has to be on your list. So there you go. Those are my choices for the coolest practical performance cars. Kind of everything at all price points, from $8,000 for a Focus ST to $85,000 for a CT5V Blackwing. You can get a practical car, a relatively affordable car, and a cool car, and that's fun all in one. All that stuff can be rolled up in one, as I've proven.